If 50 was a burden on one of the richest places in our country, what about all these other communities that have been overrun with hundreds or thousands?
This past week produced a fake outpouring of political outrage when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sent 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard.
It is a manufactured crisis by ambush.
Since then, a small number of migrants have also been dropped off outside VP Kamala Harris's Washington, D.C. residence, as well as the president's home state of Delaware.
Using them as a political stunt.
But stunt though it may be, the move highlights the news that since last year, migrants crossing the southern border have topped 2 million for the first time ever.
This is a national security threat for our country as well as a public safety threat.
Taking some time out from air traffic control, Governor DeSantis delivered an interesting speech in Miami last weekend to a convocation of conservatives.
The last few years have witnessed a great American exodus from states and localities governed by leftist politicians.
Some called it a test drive of ideas for a presidential run, and it probably was. But his great American exodus should have caught the eye of anyone interested in the flow of U.S. history.
Since COVID, there's been more adjusted gross income move into the state of Florida than has ever moved into any one state over a similar time period in American history.
In short, he means the movement of U.S. population out of California and the north, primarily New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, into states in the south and west. The specialists who chart population movements have been noting this migration from north to south for years.
New census data is out, and it is official. People are packing their bags and leaving Illinois. Illinois had a net loss of more than 122,000 people in 2021. That marks the largest decline in state history. Only New York and D.C. saw a bigger percentage of out-migration.
To be sure, some of this movement has occurred within state borders, for instance, out of New York City to the suburbs. And in June, the American Enterprise Institute discussed the different ways COVID-19 has changed the geography of America's cities.
The biggest problem, and it was raised a couple days ago when I was talking with Rick Caruso, I was running for mayor of LA, and Rick said, how can I go to an investor and say, you should put money into Los Angeles when you've got homeless and crime issues and terrible schools?
It is this mismanagement of liberal cities that has created an economic opportunity which governors like Mr. DeSantis have tapped into.
We had a $102 billion top-line budget, and that yielded a $22 billion surplus, the largest in the history of the state of Florida. And again, with no income tax, that's purely from expanding the economic pie and economic activity.
Receiving almost no attention is the fact that it's also Black Americans that are moving from north to south, reversing the Great Migration North during the 20th century. A recent Brookings Institution report notes the growth of the so-called New South, especially in Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina, but also in metropolitan regions such as Atlanta, Dallas, and Houston.
But what they've done is they allow for the development of large communities in the suburbs that are in many cases affordable. One of our late board members of Urban Reform, he was building townhomes in West Houston for $150,000. So I said, who's moving into them? Predominantly African Americans and Hispanics.
And so we segue back to the battle over migrants being sent to the ostentatiously self-described sanctuary cities.
Any dollar that goes to the state of Texas or the state of Arizona, every single one of those dollars needs to be committed to cities like Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C.
Mayors like Lori Lightfoot in Chicago say they lack the resources to provide for these migrants. I believe it. Decades of unrestrained spending have turned these cities' budgets into a ball and chain.
If cities want to come back, they're going to have to fix themselves. And if they do that, I don't think they will be dominant in the way that they once were, but I think that they could have a decent future. To me, the future of New York City is as much Brooklyn and Queens as it is Manhattan.